Testing 1, 2, 3.
Sounds good, Brett.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Fred.
How you doing?
Hey, good.
Good. Another day coming to the end.
Yes. So my wife says that she has read that a majority draft of a U.S. Supreme Court opinion overturning Roe versus Wade has been leaked.
Oh, the one that's coming up, or the old
Yep.
one?
Well, Roe v. Wade is a 1973 decision.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
apparently they've got the votes and all hell will break loose.
oh yeah, yeah. You know, it's really interesting. These strict constructionalists, when they get in a position of authority, they suddenly kind of just forget their roots, or they forget history. I think it's more like it. That,
Well, what they really care about is that the decisions come out their way.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
rest of it is of not much interest to anybody except a handful of scholars,
no, none, really none.
which doesn't include us, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, uh, yeah. So in law school, they always keep telling you that the court doesn't get involved with politics.
That was nonsense when I was in law school. Oh, those many decades ago.
I know. I mean, it's that always struck me as a real interesting thing that they would focus on that, especially now. I hope they're still not saying that in law school. I don't think anybody would believe it.
Right. Of course, it's inherently political. It's the exercise of power by government. Yeah. Jeez.
Yep. Yep. It doesn't really make a difference who's in power.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right about all hell breaking loose. It's going to be it's going to be it's going to be crazy when that happens. I think that
Of course, this is not going to be a surprise to many people.
Oh no. Then I read an article earlier today where the people that are opposed to Roe v. Wade and opposed to abortions are wanting to, make it, once this decision comes out, they're wanting to make laws prohibiting abortions, with state by state, nationwide. You get each state in the union to basically limit or eliminate the ability to get an abortion.
Well, that only works in a third of the states.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. But it's here we are in the 21st century, more or less, and we've got a war going on that's reminiscent of World War II and siege fighting from World War I. We have thinking in the United States that's harkening back to the Middle Ages. Here we got countries like South America that are, religious countries that are saying that abortions are all okay.
Yes. It reminds me when the invasion started, one State Department official was saying, I did not expect to wake up back in 1939.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of
that's where we are.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is a refight of the famous winter war between Finland and Russia.
Right.
And the Finns cleaned the Russians' clocks for months.
Yeah, well, they're
500,000 Russian casualties.
Yeah, and then we'll see when Finland joins the NATO. what the Russian, what Putin says about that. You know, 'cause
Yeah.
it looks like Finland and Sweden are going to go ahead and vote.
I think so. Yep.
Hi, Deborah. How was Ireland? Oh, she's
Hey. Giving us the silent treatment.
Yep.
It was grand.
Yeah, it looked great. Thanks for sending all the pictures. It was vicarious enjoyment.
I have plenty more, but I decided I wouldn't inflict it on everybody. But
Yeah.
I also brought COVID home with me, so I'm in isolation upstairs.
Oh, that's too bad.
It is too bad. It is too bad. But
we're going to live with it for a while.
we are going to live with it for a while. And I was vaxxed and boosted twice, so it's really a significant cold. That's what it feels like. But anyway, nobody needs. Yeah,
that's too bad.
Thank you. Thank you.
But that goes par for the course when you travel. You're going to get something.
Yeah,
that's right.
You asked for it.
It was an adventure. It was an adventure. I was wearing my mask, but hey, it's all good. It's all good. All right, we're at 6 o'clock. Let's see. Do we have everybody? I believe we have all of our commissioners. So why don't let's see, is Ann here? Yes, all right. Then I am going to call us to order. This meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E1A and in compliance with the Brown Act. That means that we call the roll every time. So I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Cahill.
Here.
Commissioner Elkin.
Here.
Commissioner Ingbarth.
Here.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hauser.
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Schneider.
Here.
That's all of us. That's wonderful. I've announced that all of the votes will be taken by roll call. And do we have public appearances? Do we have public comment? I believe we do have one public comment. Jen, is that true?
I do have public comments for some items later on in the agenda, but nothing for this section.
Okay. All right, then moving on, we will take action on the resolution establishing the need to hold teleconference meeting due to proclaimed state of emergency. Do I have a motion?
I move the motion.
Second.
Okay. Then I will, any discussion? Okay, let me call the roll. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ingbarth.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes. Yes.
And it's unanimous. And then we move into our presentations, the facilities master plan discussion.
I believe we have Jill Ayers from Group 4 with us tonight. Jill, would you like to take over this one?
Yes, thank you for having us again. It's good to see you all. Since the last time we were here with you 2 months ago, we gave you a presentation at that time summarizing the findings and recommendations. None of that has changed. What has changed since that last presentation was we wrote it up into a final report document that I believe has been shared with you in your agenda packet. We put some numbers to some potential projects, some capital budgets that was in a separate memo for various reasons, which I believe has been shared with you as well. And we've gotten a few more review comments from a very, very eagle-eyed staffer who found some typos and things that need to be clarified. And we will follow up this with a revised version of that. But for the most part, I don't have anything new to share with you tonight. I just wanted to see if you had any questions about the report or anything that I can answer for you tonight.
I have one question, and at your last time you were here, you mentioned that you would provide the supporting documents, the ADA assessments, and the like. And I'm wondering if you're able to do that. If you could provide all of us or the branches with those documents.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have shared most of those at the library, and I apologize that those didn't make it into the packet. We may be waiting for one last one for the consultant to finish up, but those are on the way.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I've got some people that are interested in looking at them, so I'll tell them to wait.
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie, your hand is up.
Yes, are we going to talk about this later on in the agenda, or is this the opportunity to?
This is the
ask about
discussion.
Pardon
This
me?
is the discussion. Yes, this is the discussion section.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to comment that I appreciated the facilities report overall and some of the emphasis on the fact that we have a unique library system where the jurisdictions own the buildings and they have responsibilities, and we as the library have separate responsibilities. On page 158 of the agenda, which is, I don't know what page it is in the report, it's the letter at the end, which talks about the capital budgeting and timeline for recommended projects. I think it's the third page of that. Jen, is it possible to pull that up? 158 on our agenda. Yeah. So specifically, a lot of the renovation projects, we know that we need to fund under, especially under Measure Y. These the new and the relocate ones have, major responsibilities, would be jurisdictional responsibilities for the buildings. And I wondered if you had even or could even make an attempt to break down these projected budget costs into those different categories.
Into construction versus the rest of the project?
Yes, just more clearly delineate, because we have leases with the jurisdictions and that spell out the library is basically responsible for the insides and maintaining all that, and the historically the relationship has been that the jurisdictions actually build the buildings, which I know we all know. But this kind of where we're going is we need to have an understanding of how much the budget, how much the library needs to pay for, how much the jurisdictions need to pay for, and then what the overflow will be to asking our foundation to be raising money for. So this just kind of lumped it all together.
Okay, I can work with the administrative team to do that. If you were building a new building, am I hearing it right that the library would chip in for the interiors of it, or is it the library that's putting the furniture and shelving in? I'm not quite sure where the line is on a new construction project.
I'm not sure where the line
Okay.
is because we haven't had one since for 19 years. And we haven't had any under the new revised GAPA, but in a general sense, it's, building shell is the jurisdiction. And then, we would need to talk about the interiors, but certainly all the furnishings and all that would be library responsibility.
Okay.
So just a better handle on it, because again, we're going to be calling on our foundation to help us raise some major funds, and it needs to be a little more clear what those funds will be paying for.
Okay, yep, we can work on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm not seeing any other.
Well, this is Tom Hauser. I have a question. I'm sorry. How can we vote on this later on the agenda if we don't have a final draft? Because we're talking about getting some more information for Fred and we're talking about changing the document. So I'm just throwing that out there. I like being difficult.
No one's calling you difficult, Tom, but I
Well,
think there are
everybody is.
typos and there are documents that I believe Fred asked, Commissioner Engbarth asked for before, that I believe Group 4 has provided to the library, although perhaps we haven't seen it as a commission. So, Director Hammond, what are your thoughts? Do you want to? We can certainly accept it. You know,
Yeah.
knowing that we will get the additional information, or we can put it off until June.
Yeah, you could certainly do either one. I believe Commissioner Parker has a question or comment. Why don't we hear that first?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Parker, I didn't see your hand. Go for it.
I was slow finding my button, new computer, so sorry. I have kind of a follow-up question to Commissioner McKenzie's, because we do divide responsibilities for the buildings. I'm wondering if Group 4 has presented any of this material to our jurisdictions. In particular, I'm looking, of course, at the Roanoke Park in Cotati, where it's labeled a renovation, but it's a sizable chunk of money. And I have a feeling that the folks in Roanoke Park and Cotati would like to be brought into this discussion.
Mm-hmm. We did
I
not.
think that's the next phase.
Yeah, we did not ask them to present
Right.
anything to the partners. That will be a responsibility of library administration.
So again, this comes back to budgeting and just how we can budget, knowing that this will be a divided labor and divided cost. What kind of projections can we realistically work with on these kinds of numbers? I guess that goes to you, Director Hammond. Just how would you see going forward?
I think the budgets that are presented here are, the vast majority of the numbers that you see here are for the construction. So that would be the responsibility of the JPA partners. The library's portion would be the interior. And we have committed ourselves to working with our partners because we know that they have limited funds, as do we. But we would like to build our fundraising capacity so that we can help them move these projects forward. So it's not going to be a completely bright line dividing who's responsible for what. It's something that we're going to work out, iteratively and cooperatively as we go forward.
And also, I think it's we have to at least put a number out there and make sure that the partners know what exactly does need to be done. So this is the first step in the conversation, but an analysis of the buildings and the services is where we have to start. Any other comments? And I hear you, Commissioner Hauser. Is it the pleasure of the commission do we think that we're lacking the information to accept the project at the moment?
I see several comments here.
I'm not seeing hands, so you're going to have to.
Commissioner Cahill, Commissioner Elkind, and then Commissioner McKenzie.
Commissioner Cahill.
Yes, we can accept any collection of pieces of paper. I'm a bit concerned with the typos. I was one of those folks who caught one of the typos and others caught others. And I was told by staff that none of these really mattered, but I'm looking at page 45 of the report. This is the one that I caught. It involves the new Central Santa Rosa Library. And the bottom line says, new construction is not the only option. Existing buildings with, and then it ends. And so I'd kind of like to see what they had to say. I would prefer to postpone this just for technical reasons to get a clean copy. and I don't expect any further discussion on this until next month. I'm not that concerned with follow-up documents with new information, but I really would like to see a clean copy of the report before we accept it.
Commissioner Elkin.
I'm fine with deferring acceptance of the report. I think overall it's a fine job. I would like to have the typos cleared up. I'm somewhat stunned as I look at the project budget, given the fact that these are 2022 dollars, and we're talking about over $200 million here. Just quick math. It's $220 million. Even if our partners can come up with this money, it's not going to happen right away, which means that the amount that's going to be required is going to increase with increasing construction costs. I don't have an answer to this. I'm just struck by the enormity of the challenge that we're facing, and I can't speak for other partners, but as I look at this, I see that Healdsburg, for example, has one of the smaller amounts. But if I were to go to the city council and say, we need an additional $11 million, that would be I don't want to say a hard sell. That's going to be a long-term effort to procure that. That's my only comment.
Thanks, Commissioner Elkin. Anybody else? Oh, Commissioner McKenzie. Sorry.
Yes, following up on what Commissioner Elkin just said and what I said before about, a breakdown between, really what the library's responsibilities and the jurisdiction's responsibilities. We have to keep in mind that the jurisdictions are the ones with the buildings and would decide whether they wanted another building or not. I mean, it really isn't up to us to go and say, Rohnert Park, you need to spend, you're going to have this $18 million renovation. They might want to have a smaller renovation. It's really their building to renovate. And so I would also, just as a sidebar, the building itself was built 19 years ago for $6 million. And this has an $18 million renovation budget. So, I mean, they are shocking numbers, and it's just, excuse me, I would suggest delaying approval of this until all of the people who've asked for things, the documents, the fine tuning, the corrections of the mistakes, and also what I have requested, which is a better breakdown between what the kind of overall shell construction costs are versus the insides. That would be the library responsibility. So that would be my preference. Thank you.
Commissioner Ingbarth.
Just a matter of maybe thinking downstream on this. I think, and it's related to the question about getting this information from the JPA partners. I think that how it's presented to them would make a big difference. If we're asking each city to raise the money and come up with the money for the buildings, that I think we'd run into the problem that we're all anticipating. I think that they would, as Sebastopol would say, we didn't have the resources. But usually when there's a big project like this, and people start looking at financing through bonds and debt, and the JPA partners there's nothing that would stop them from collectively, as the partners of the JPA say, that the JPA might, for example, put out a bond to fund the infrastructure for parts of it or all of it, and collectively back that kind of a bond that might make it easier to pass. So I think how we present it to them will make a difference in how we present this package. Because I think if it is, as I said, presented city by city, I think we're going to run into some resistance. But if they see that it's part of a bigger thing, for example, when the JC wanted to build a library, they went to the voters and got a bond to do that. And I think that might be something we may want to be looking at with them, with the JPA partners joining in on it.
Thank you. Ann and Dave, you both have your hands up. Ann, do you want Dave to go first, or would you like to go first?
Yeah, let Dave go first.
Okay.
Hi, Commissioners. Dave Toshiba, Facilities Manager. So hopefully I can help. And Jill, you interrupt me if I go in the wrong direction or saying something that isn't correct. So the budgets that we're looking at here on this page, these aren't all like recommended for us to fund today. These are 10-year. This is a 10-year outlook over in terms of Q2 2022 dollars. So there's going to be inflation to these costs if the projects are done 10 years from today. That's what this report is saying there. The other things that Mr. Eggenbar just was talking about, those are absolutely eye-opening things for our city partners to look at, bond measures and those kind of funding things, but they need to know what the prices are. In the past, these reports have neglected to show these costs. So this is really eye-opening to this commission and to myself and to our staff. And we're all, a little, some of them are shocking, sure. The other thing, the reports and stuff that generated this, there's ADA assessments and there was structural reports. That's all data that Group 4 compiled and to create this report. So actually, I don't know, sharing that is really getting into a lot of weeds of, we have, a dispenser in a bathroom that's a 1/4 inch too low and needs to get raised. I don't know if you guys want that. That information is in hand. We have that. And we certainly can share that at any time. And I've already been sharing with our city partners some of that information, that those ADA evaluations put a time clock on the repairs of 10 years. So our city partners will be on the hook for that, and hopefully they'll be motivated to work with us to get those repaired. But it does motion a 10-year time period to start addressing the ADA needs in all the locations that were assessed.
Thanks very much. Ann?
Yes, thank you. So everything Dave said is absolutely true. This is a long-term proposal here. This is what it's reflected at in terms of 2022 dollars. But we need to plan. We need to get all of these things calendared so that we can be prepared. And I understand they're big numbers, and it is a bit shocking. But what we're asking you tonight is accept the report, not to necessarily approve it. These are the findings of our consultant experts in the field, and they know what they're doing. So you don't need to worry that the numbers are wrong. We need to accept the findings, and then we'll figure out how to move forward and make all of this something that we can realize. I see Commissioner McKenzie has a question or comment.
Does anybody have a comment before Commissioner McKenzie, since she has spoken before? Okay, Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, on an entirely different topic. Back in the kind of the heart of the report, I had a note here about page 108. This was, somebody asked about this the last time we talked about it, but I'm still not clear about it at all. What exactly this means, because we share materials, and if I have my address down at, I use the Roanoke Park Library, that's my library, and if I order a book, I request a hold for a book, and Roanoke Park doesn't have it at that time, and it comes from Healdsburg, does that show me as using Healdsburg as the last library visited?
No, it should show you from where you checked it out. So if you check it out at Roanoke Park, that will be the place that's shown.
So that we really do have this much use of people going to other libraries themselves, driving there, however they get there, and checking out materials.
We do.
I don't really know how much one colored dot represents.
Oh, like your dot from Rohnert Park on your house, what it represents?
Well, no, we could just maybe just explain this, that particular slide.
Sure. This is based on Orange Boy's last branch visited data set, which is purely all of the cards that you have, the last branch that person visited to check out something out, whether it's one book, one DVD, or 100 kids' books. That doesn't really matter. What really matters is where they live relative to the branch they traveled to check something out. What it also doesn't have is a particular point in time. This could be a lot of people who did this all within the last year, but this also has people who haven't checked something out for several years. So it's important to keep that in mind when we're looking at this map. That said, what it shows us is that sort of conventional wisdom of everyone mostly visiting the branch closest to where they live is not in a lot of your communities exclusively true. The branches do work together as a network, and as you say, if a material isn't available at Rohnert Park and you request it from Healdsburg, you're able to get it there. So this offers us, from a planning perspective, a few advantages, and one of those is that sort of being able to not have to expand every single branch because the population directly around it has changed or grown in some way. We can think more holistically about your network and the opportunities that you have for that capacity sort of more regionally or more in more areas. So that's not something we really got into in this plan, but that's one of those nice things about having this confirmed, that not everybody just visits the branch closest to home. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Schneider, you were next.
Thank you. I just, thanks for this great report. Really interesting. I'm not shocked by the costs.
You've seen higher, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I did want to say, in terms of Commissioner McKenzie's request to have the costs broken out, having just finished a report finally, somewhat similar to this with projects in my library, I feel puzzled about how it would even be possible to sort of tweeze out internal tenant improvements versus external. I'll leave it up to you, but I'm just expressing my puzzlement about that even being possible or desirable. Anyway, great report, and I look forward to seeing the typos cleaned up. Thanks.
Me too. I'm so sorry.
Commissioner Elkin, you were next.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a brief comment. Anne, this is in response to what you said. I didn't want to give you the wrong impression. I think this is a wonderful report. My desire to delay accepting it has nothing to do with the costs that were indicated for the capital projects, only a desire to see the typos and omissions cleared up and the additional information provided. My concern about the costs is separate and apart from this. I don't want to shoot the messenger for conveying the bad but realistic and understandable news. And I'd also like to comment on what Commissioner Engbart said, because I think that in fact, we'll need, when we do engage, when library staff engages with our partners, I think we'll have to be creative and open-minded about all possible financing arrangements. And what our collective responsibility will be is to sell the governing bodies on the value that the library provides and the benefits to the community of making this kind of additional investment. So I just want to separate those two things. I think this was a wonderful job by Group 4. I'd just like to see those minor corrections and omissions taken care of. That's all. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Parker.
Thanks. I'm going to adjust this slide and this topic of use pattern first, but then I want to go back to the overall numbers. On use pattern, if somebody moves, I mean, I've been guilty of this. moving and, maybe my town changes, but I haven't moved out of the county. So I just wonder, some of these dots must reflect people who have moved out of their parents' home and now are setting up an apartment in a different town, but so they're not traveling to a different, they may still be using their home branch, but maybe not their last address home branch. Would you agree?
It's almost certainly true that some people in this data set have moved since, either they last used the library or they moved and didn't update their address with the library. That happens all the time. I was just talking with another library about that this morning and how we accommodate that in an analysis like this. I think the numbers that you have in this case are your friend. The amount of circulation that you do, the amount of checkout records that you have, the majority of those are going to still be accurate. Those people have lived in Sonoma County for a long time. They moved here, they've raised families. So a lot of that is reflected. A few of those little dots are going to be different. But I think that the bulk, we can feel confident that the overall patterns are probably generally true.
Okay, thanks. So then coming back to the number, the page with all those big scary numbers.
Yeah.
Some of the recommendations, even in the language of the recommendations for each branch, fall into ongoing or typical maintenance kinds of expenses. And I think that as I was looking through this, I was hoping to get, and maybe this comes down to Andy and the finance groups, more precise budgeting on a year by year or quarter by quarter basis, but to see like some things need to be taken care of out of our maintenance plan and out of our facilities maintenance, as opposed to these bigger projects. Is that a fair read?
The results of the facility condition assessments, all the maintenance needs that are due over the next 10 years, those are included in these budgets. I think the library was very smart to have that detailed analysis of the library facility conditions be part of this process. And what I can easily do is show you how I built up to these big scary numbers based on the amount of maintenance that's going to be due at Cloverdale over the next 10 years. Plus the opportunity, as long as you're doing that, to make some other changes for service and operations and modernizing that customer experience. And so showing how those two things go together, and then you're gonna update some furniture at the same time, which is going to be the library's responsibility. There's going to be the soft costs for design and permitting and all of those things that go into an overall, big scary number, but hopefully a number that you can work with. One of the founding principles of Group 4, he said something that I always remember, which is that the best bad news is old bad news. These are big numbers, but they are bad news, and you know them, and you can move forward now. So I'm reminded of a project that we worked on for the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. About 10, 12 years ago, we did a master plan for them, and they were not the same as Sonoma County Library, but they are in a similar situation where they have this sort of joint powers. Each community sort of thinks of its facilities in its own way, and we're responsible for this, and the library is responsible for that. And we started with them with a facility condition assessment as well, and it showed like a really big, unlike your buildings are in pretty good shape because you've been taking care of them, but there was a lot of maintenance need. And once you sort of thought about the amount of work that these buildings needed, the amount of additional to do something really special and wonderful in there for library service was not that much more, comparatively speaking. So that actually did give them something to talk about when they went out to the community of, hey, there's a big need. No one's going to vote to tax themselves for taking care of broken sewer lines and roofs that need replacing. But once you start building in things like more group study rooms, more places for people to get together and gather, better technology, all of those things, the community starts getting excited about this. And they can start seeing the future of their library facilities in a way that they can imagine making an investment. I don't know if that's the direction you're going to go. But it's part of that whole conversation about this isn't just about having the roofs not leak, but this is really about the future, the reimagining of your library facilities to go with the services and programs that you've been talking about.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So I think that the majority thinks that we would like to accept a report that has the errors corrected and the typos fixed. So I think we're going to ask you to bring it back to us next month.
Yep, happy to do it.
Chair
That would be
Doyle, we
great.
do have Commissioner McKenzie with her hands raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was your last comment. Commissioner McKenzie.
Well, this is an important topic, so I
Sure.
do want to say two quick things. One is I'm happy to modify my request if it's completely ridiculous or unacceptable to ask for any cost breakdown, but perhaps a percentage maybe of a major remodel and a brand new building, roughly the percentage of the interior versus the shell. So we'd have a little bit of an idea about that. And then also, I believe several of us have got an email that doesn't seem to have the history and genealogy annex that the library owns, doesn't seem to be included in this report. Was there a reason for that?
That was because the library is, responsible for that building. I think you own it. And that was less of an issue of something you would need to go talk to with your partners about. It's absolutely part of the library's ongoing responsibility. We are right now working on a separate study of what your support services will look like, the facility needs for that, and we are looking at history, genealogy, and some of those other special services that the library provides being part of that. So that's in process, but we didn't have a firm recommendation for where that should go yet, just that it's going to go somewhere.
Do you mean the building's going to go somewhere or be used differently? Is that what you're saying?
The building, my understanding is it's part of the area of downtown Santa Rosa that's going to be redeveloped. The city's going to want to put some housing or mixed use something or other on it. And so that the library is going to need to find an alternate home for those resources at some point when the central library goes away at the same time. So what the space needs for that are, what the opportunities are for perhaps co-locating that with your support services functions in a central location that the whole community could get to. That's part of what we're looking at now.
Okay, by support services, that's what we're currently calling headquarters, right?
I think you're calling it your headquarters, yes.
Okay. And then, okay, anyway, thank you for that.
Thanks very much. And we will see you next month.
David
We do have
Cahill.
Commissioner Cahill.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I can't resist pointing out that the figures for the central Santa Rosa Library are just not real. They're extremely soft. The city, as like most cities, will always have various redevelopment plans, wandering around. But this one is just not real at all. Nobody is going to spend $60 million probably to renovate or build us a new library after they just promised us $10 million for a new Rosen branch. And these plans tend to collapse so frequently that I would like to take this particular figure with a barrel of salt. That's all.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks very much. Do we have any public comment on that?
I do have a public comment for the acceptance of the facilities master plan, which would be item 11.1. Would you like to wait until that comes later or address it now?
Well, I think that we should bring the acceptance of the plan up because we're not going to. We're not going to accept it until next month. So.
Well, in that case, I do have a public comment.
All right, that sounds good.
Dear Commissioners, the facilities master plan does not reference 725 3rd Street, the 55-year-old building which houses the important history and genealogy collection and is owned by Sonoma County Library. In a March 9th email, we were told by Ann Hammond that the H&G Annex would be considered as part of the central library analysis. Is the plan to move this collection and the materials that make up the Sonoma County Archives to a new building that will also serve as the administrative and support services facility discussed at your March 7th meeting? Or will it be relocated along with the central library? Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Lynn Downey and Catherine J. Reinhardt, co-chairs of the Advocates for the Sonoma County Archives.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, next we have our Library Advisory Board's Foundation or Friends of the Library, and I believe we have our foundation here with us.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having me. Just a quick update. The foundation has been really busy, thanks to our members and thanks to everybody who's supporting us, and especially Craig Palmer. So a big thank you out to him for all of his support and ideas and knowledge. We've been having nominating committee meetings, and I want to say a big thank you to Commissioner Schneider and Commissioner McKenzie for coming to one of our meetings. Absolutely incredible. The energy and the resources and the information you provided were invaluable, and thank you for your support. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. I really appreciate having the ongoing dialogue, and thank you. And of course, any commissioners, if you want to talk to me or other foundation members at any time, we welcome your ideas and your input. We are all advocates for the library system, and so we welcome these conversations. We've been really lucky, these ongoing nominating committee meetings that we've been having, where we meet with community members and library folks and advocates and things like that. The way I see it is, one, we've created this awesome list of potential board members, and not every single person on it is going to become a foundation board member. However, we're going to talk to these folks because regardless of whether they become a board member or a donor or an advocate or something else, we're spreading the message, right? And so just like all of you, we love the library and we want to spread the message. And so the more people we talk to and the more we get the word out, the more we can all raise the level of knowledge about the library and the library's needs. And so that's been really exciting, and thank you for your support. Moving on, that is Stewardship of Donors, which is something that we have been working on and talking about for a while, and we are going to start really taking it a lot seriously. As a all volunteer nonprofit, it's been hard for us to really connect and appreciate our donors, which we absolutely do, but we want to show them even more so. We are so grateful for every person who donates in any denomination. And so this will be expanded into more phone calls, more emails, more print media. And so one way this is going to be easier is we're going to put all of our donor information into a database called Bloomerang, and this will just make it easier for us to know when was the last time we actually contacted this person, because we have some really generous donors who we need to thank, and we need to say thank you so much for being such a continued donor. You have donated every year for the past 10 years. Thank you. What can we pass along? What are you interested in? Why do you give to the library? And just really thanking people as they so deserve. And so that's something we're really excited about. Let's see, going down my list. I've talked to you about a new website before. We are working on getting another new website. As you know, websites, the timeline for technology is so short these days, but we are working on getting a new website, updated website. This will have updated photos, thanks to Sonoma County Library, that are, taken in the library, things like that. And it'll be the hub for information about the Roseland Capital Campaign, which will kick off later this year. And it'll also have information about other upcoming projects like a Legacy Society. And so this website will be just expanded and a better resource for our supporters. And lastly, we hope to see a MOU on next commission's meeting in June between the Library Foundation and the commission. This is something that we have talked about, I believe, last year, or maybe it was the year before that. And Director Hammond brought an MOU to the different friends groups as well as the foundation. And so we are looking over that and working on it, and we'll collaborate with library staff and come back to you in June with an MOU for your review. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Any questions for Ms. Ortiz? We really appreciate your work on this, and there seems like there's so much energy. It's really terrific. Thanks very much. All right, then we're going to move into the library reports. Director Hammond, do you want to call some things out from the library report?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, the library reports are in the packet, and for the most part, they stand as is. The one thing I would like to draw your attention to is our post-pandemic recovery. We have done an amazing job of coming back from the depths of despair during the pandemic, when we couldn't do much of anything, and then gradually beginning to reopen and to expand our capabilities. And now we are just so very close to where we were pre-pandemic in terms of checkouts. And I think by next month, we will have exceeded that. So kudos to our staff for all of the work they've done and the ways that they have responded to these challenges and finding new ways to serve the community in our traditional ways as well as our new ways. So I'm just really happy with where we are right now, and take any questions that you might have.
I believe there's a public comment on your library report, but certainly we can take commissioner comments first. Do we have any commissioner comments?
We have Commissioner McKenzie.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I applaud you and all the staff for this. I was thrilled to see the report that showed we were back basically, especially in circulation, and a big increase in the e-resources being used. But it's still, if I understood, I don't have the report in front of me right this sec. It's still a 2-to-1 physical resources versus e-resource in terms of checkouts. Is that correct?
Yes, the physical is still the bulk of what we do. The e-resources have been proportionately increasing very, very fast, but the majority of our checkouts are still physical.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you again. It was a great report.
Thank you.
Commissioner Angbarth.
Yes, thank you for the report. I mean, it's always great reading it and catching up on what's going on. You guys are getting a lot done. I had a couple of questions. One of them, I saw that there's a bicycle repair station, and I was wondering about that. You know, is that one branch, or are they thinking of doing bike repairs in other locations as well? Or I was curious about what that was about.
Yeah, we're always looking at beta testing something and then expanding it. Do we have someone from Public Services or Programming who would like to speak to that?
Sure. Good evening, Library Commission. This is Sarah Vantries, Public Services Division Manager. We do have bicycle repair stations at several of our branches, and we can consider them for others. Right now, Facilities is working on improving our bike racks at some locations. We have funded previous bicycle repair stations using donated funds, and I'm not sure if we've been keeping track of how they are used, but that could be a way that we make future decisions for adding.
It's a fun idea. I think it's a good idea. It encourages people to bring bikes, and they can get them fixed when they're there. That's pretty good. Then on the fund development, I had a couple of questions about that part of your report. And one of them was there's a section where it's talking about stewardship training and a development audit. And I was wondering what those two items were.
Sure. Craig, are you with us? Would you like to take that one?
Craig, you're on mute.
You'd think by now I would have learned that. Sarah and Judy and I were working on this for a while and finished it a few weeks back. Basically, what we were able to do with everybody's help was look at the past 3 years of donations to the foundation and look at them for the basic analytics that we would look at from a renewal standpoint, which is to say, what are the renewal numbers? What's the average gift? What's the migration with a renewing donor? Do they give more? Do they give less when they renew the following year? And this was basically the audit. And the audit information didn't give us anything we didn't probably know anecdotally, but it gave it to us in a baseline. And what it showed was that the foundation's renewal rate from 19 to 20 was 40%. And you folks know that we look for renewal rates more in the 80% category. But also troubling in that low renewal rate was those renewing donors gave 25% less than they'd given the previous year. Then from the following year, the renewal rate actually fell to 30%. So how nice to know that. The nice part about that is it's most easily turned around by stewardship, which is to say, reconnecting with donors, doing the things that get donors engaged. And to Judy and Sarah's credit, the three of us sat around a kitchen table and we went and looked at every single donor on that list. There was 700 and some of them, and to see what their giving history was, what their behavior was across the 3 years. And from that, we pulled a list of maybe more than 2 dozen, maybe close to 3 dozen folks who at one time or another in 3 years had given $1,000 or more. And those folks, Sarah and I are calling to set up visits, this is page 1 from the playbook. There's nothing brilliant about any of this. It's let's catch up with our donors, visit with them, thank them for their gift, find out what motivated them, let them know what's coming in the future. And then we made another list of people that at any point in that 3-year period had given $500 or more. And at the May board meeting, I think this is kind of exciting, all the board members will be given a packet of maybe 7 to 10 names with a script and a little profile on these donors for them to all sort of get out their cell phones and call them and just say thank you. This is a process that in other organizations I've been at sometimes doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes to call these folks because most of these calls go to voicemail. But the point is, it's a board member from the foundation just calling them up to say thank you. So the stewardship basically is, let's get back in touch with our high value donors. Let's do all the classic basic, what in the jargon these days is called move management. And then let's start to do activities that engage them. Maybe we'll do an author event. Maybe we'll do a tour of a library, that sort of thing as we go along to start to get them engaged. That's basically what came out of the audit. And the audit is what precipitated the stewardship commitment that Sarah talked about.
Great. Sounds like both good ideas. So it's good. Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner, thanks for the question.
Thank you. Anybody else? And I do have a question. I think I asked this last time, conferences and training and none submitted. I would love to hear what staff is getting from some of the conferences and training, just because we know they're learning something, and it would be great to hear how they're putting it to work, how they're inspired. You know, it may not be what they learned at the conference, but they've put it to work here in a different way. So I would love that. And especially since annual is coming up, I assume that there are going to be some staff that are going to annual and CLA the same month. So it would be great to hear, you know, anonymous, certainly if they like, but I hope everybody feels like they have permission to brag about the things that they're doing for the system, because we're very proud of it and we want to be able to brag to the public when we're out there.
We had a number of people who went to PLA and we reported back on that. And we do have some people who will be going to the Kosugi IT conference, as well as ALA and CLA. So we'll definitely report back on those.
Super, thanks. I do believe we have a public comment on the library report.
Yes, thank you. Dear Commissioners, advocates for the Sonoma County Archives appreciate the summary of the March 8th, 2022 Yolo County Archives tour that is included in the management report. A lot of great information was shared by Heather Langtot, Archives and Records Center Coordinator for Yolo County, that should prove useful to Sonoma County Library staff as they work with Noor Maxwell, who attended the March 8th tour from the Sonoma County Administrator's Office in drafting an MOU that outlines roles and responsibilities with regard to the Sonoma County Archives collection. What is the status of the MOU? Will it be completed before Director Hammond retires in July? If not, we ask that another SCL staff member be assigned to the project. Great strides have been taken in providing improved access to and management of the archives, and we hope to maintain this momentum under the new library administration. Sincerely, Lynn Downey and Catherine J. Reinhardt, co-chairs of Advocates for the Sonoma County Archives.
Thanks very much. We'll address that later. Not today, but later. Okay. Library news. Any additional information about that? Library news or the library publicity? It's, as ever, very rich and rich in information. Okay, we can move on to the financial reports then. Do we need to talk about those? All right.
Sure.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if you wanted comments from me. I didn't know what.
Sure.
So okay.
If you've got comments,
Sure.
the reports are pretty straightforward, but
pretty straightforward. I'll give you a glimpse into what's happening. You'll see next month. The month of April, as you know, is the second installment of property taxes due, which is the two major receipts during the fiscal year is in December and in April. And $9.3 million were posted in our receipts for April, which meets the targeted budget for property tax revenues. So we've made our target. That means any new receipts posted for the month of May through June will exceed our target. On the sales tax side, the month of March is typically the lowest month posted in terms of receipts. But that's typical, and I'm still projecting that we will meet our revenue target under the sales tax. Under expenditures, overall, we're a little under budget, spending under budget. Managers have been told a couple of times to look at their budgets and make sure that they make their purchases within this fiscal year, and to review their budgets to notify me if they're going to be under or over in their budgets. I do not expect any overages. And so because we're underspending, there is a likelihood, but we'll see when we close the books at the end of the year, that there might be a surplus, a budget surplus in revenue. And that's it for a summary.
If there are any questions? Terrific. Thanks very much. All right, then we'll move into the commission liaison reports. Does anybody have anything to add to their commission report? Seeing no hands, we can move down to the public comment, I suppose. Public comment on the commissioner reports. And now to the committee on liaison reports. Let's see. Commissioner Elkind, anything to add to your finance committee report?
Well, not to add, since the report is pretty extensive, but just to highlight that one of the discussion items, this was item 4.4, it was about establishing reserves in fiscal year 2022 under the fund balance policy. And that's going to come up on our agenda later tonight. So I just wanted to say that we did have a robust discussion about this topic at the Finance Committee meeting. These reserves are permitted under the fund balance policy. CFO Lopez explained the funding for each of them. And I think it just makes good financial sense for us to allocate these funds for a major maintenance, for facilities, for IT resource replacement, for IT capital replacement, and for vehicle replacement. So I hope that we'll have the support of the full commission when we get to that point. The other thing I wanted to mention, we did have also a robust discussion about the pension plan. We will be bringing a summary of the Bartel report to the commission. I think we're going to try to do that next month. The committee felt pretty strongly that we did not want anybody from Bartel to present because we were somewhat underwhelmed by the presentation they gave to us. So we think that between CFO Lopez and myself and perhaps other members of the Finance Committee, we can set the stage a little more clearly. The net for the commission is that we have some unfunded pension liability. The total amount decreased a lot last year because of very good investment returns. But of course, anybody who's been watching the market this year knows that we can't count on that this year. And so we've been having some discussion about the potential benefits of making some additional discretionary payments to reduce that accrued unfunded liability. We'll be bringing this again to the full commission, probably not next month, but in a later month. But I just want to say that there's been ongoing discussion and analysis, and I feel confident that when we do finally bring it to the commission, we'll be able to do it in a way that's clear, straightforward, understandable, and we'll make a good case for whatever we end up recommending. So that's it, and thanks very much.
As always, thanks very much, Commissioner Elkin. Commissioner Engbarth, your hand is up.
Yes, Andy, I always enjoy watching your meetings. So I think they're really for other commissioners who want to get information on what's going on with the finance. They're well worth the time. I have one question, and I'm not sure whether it's really for you or for Myrna or for your committee, but the last meeting I had a question about cost reimbursement policy, and I didn't see anything mentioned in the Finance Committee meeting the last time about that, and I'm wondering whether you or Myrna or the committee have had a chance to look into that and what we may or may not need to do in that regard.
Sorry, I was on mute there. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you listen in, so thanks very much for doing that. Would you elaborate a little bit? You said you have a question on cost reimbursement policy.
Yeah, that the last meeting I raised the question about when we're providing services to outside agencies that are not within the library system. Technically, we're supposed to arrange for cost reimbursements for that money and that time, the service time, and then also the time for any money that we might be putting into the services being provided. And at the last commission meeting, I asked about that. I'm wondering whether there's been any discussion with you or Myrna or anybody about looking into that and developing a policy in that regard.
We haven't had any discussion at the Finance Committee. I think I would first maybe toss that back to Myrna and Ann and see if there is in fact a library policy, and if not, maybe we need to develop one. Ann or Myrna, are you aware of?
Is there a need for one?
In this regard?
Yeah.
We do not have such a policy.
So we do have a practice of cost sharing. There are a few examples of that. For example, in the Tri-County area, and maybe Public Services can speak to it a little more, there is a sharing of a bookmobile that gets services out to the remote areas, and the 3 counties share the cost of that. So, but I think in that case, we pay another county for those services. And on the other hand, there's other, in collections, there are systems where we hold the system, and the other we invoice the counties for their share of the cost of that system. So there are agreements under both scenarios of what the role is of each respective library system and the cost share for that. So there are agreements, it's codified, and we do have precedence in having mutual services.
I think the last time I raised this was in connection with our funding programs, our fundraising programs, that if we're and I think the risk of this becoming an issue is greater down the line as we do more fundraising. But if we're providing services, for example, Craig's time and efforts and any library funds that are being spent in that regard, or even in that sense, any of our staff's time on that, or any other outside organization where we're providing a service for, I think under the Revenues Act or the state acts, we're supposed to get reimbursed for the costs that are really, that are paid for out of the special tax or out of our budget, as opposed to, and for things that we're supposed to be spending that money on, as opposed to spending that money on something that's not, a library function. For example, spending it on the city of Santa Rosa, they're spending that time on a project with a private agency, private partner. So I know that it's not a simple thing, and I know that the state and Sonoma State and other places have policies on that. And I was just wondering whether it sounds like we don't have one. So I'll send more information to you, Myrna, on it in addition to what I've already sent, because I think that we might want to do that before we get too far into doing a major fundraising program.
So Fred, just to clarify for a second, it sounds as though, and I apologize, I think I misunderstood this originally. It sounds as though your concern is not about other agencies reimbursing the library for services provided. It's for outside organizations paying the library for services that the library is providing.
Right.
Okay.
I think we should have a interesting conversation about this. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lopez, do you have anything else to say? Your hand's up.
No, I'm lowering it. Thank you.
Okay. And Commissioner Engbarth, is yours going down also?
Mine too. Yeah. Sorry.
Just checking. I don't want to make.
That's Craig.
Don't want to ignore anybody.
Getting used to it.
All right. Let's see. So we are moving. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hauser, the Library Foundation report. Anything to add to that?
No, I think Sarah said plenty. We've heard enough.
Okay. Any public comment? Okay, then we can move down into the discussion items. And our 9.1 is the agenda packet cycle and meeting time recommendations.
All right. So I assume you're punting to Commissioner Schneider.
I am.
All
And
right.
Commissioner Parker. So
And
whichever.
Commissioner Parker who played an extremely important role in this. So I assume that you have all read the proposal. Basically, this is really elegantly distills months and months of work, a lot of it done by Commissioner Parker and background information to make 4 recommendations. And you can see, I don't want to read you the report, but basically the idea was, what could we do without affecting the library staff, without putting undue impact on them or changing too many of the processes, to give people more time with the packets, people meaning both the commission and the public, as well as the library staff, and also take a look at modalities that we've begun engaging in during COVID, and did we want to continue those? And also looking at the meeting time and packet delivery. Commissioner Parker, does that encapsulate the gist of our work?
Yes, you did a very elegant job of encapsulating our work. I would say that the staff does a brilliant job working with many inputs, getting reports from commissioners, from staff departments, from outside groups like the consultants that we variously hire, and putting that all together is not an easy task. So we really didn't want to say, oh, now you've got less time to do it. So we like the idea of getting basically attempting year or month end reports, but there's really no magic to having our discussion, having our meeting right away at the beginning of the month. So if we could take a few more days, say not just the Friday to Monday, but Friday to a day later in the week, or even going to the second week of the month, we would all have a longer chance to review the materials, to develop our questions, have a more fulsome conversation about the items on the agenda. And then we also discussed that with our community being as widespread across the county as it is, the hybrid meeting style is very effective. People don't have to drive from Windsor to Santa Rosa or Occidental to Santa Rosa. So that seems like a good model to maintain, as well as the various ways of getting the packet information online and having it out of branch.
And the hybrid option also, it allows us to keep the meetings at a time that is supportive of working commissioners. And we always have like at least a third of commissioners who are in the active workforce, while at the same time not inconveniencing commissioners who, or for that matter, the public who don't want to drive at night. So if there's a hybrid option, then kind of meets the best of all worlds in terms of access for support for as diverse and equitable a commission as we can possibly have. We also thought we would recommend continuing support for both online and paper meeting packets. There seems to be some preference still for paper, and didn't see a reason to disturb that hornet's nest. So, that was basically it. There's a couple of options in there. Under item 1, we have several days that we propose, but before we get to that, I suppose we would like more discussion on this and to hear back from the commission on their thoughts about these adjustments.
Commissioner Cahill.
I'm really delighted with all these recommendations. I'm particularly thrilled that you're recommending keeping hybrid meetings, and the reinstatement of the options for mailed packets. what's next? Who implements these things? Is it a commission motion? It's not agendized as such.
It is not agendized tonight. I think this is just a discussion, but we can certainly agendize it if it looks promising. Anything else, David?
Oh, no.
Commissioner Elkin.
I like this very much. I'd love to have a little more time to review the packet. If I'm thinking about this correctly, changing from the first Monday to the first Tuesday or the first Wednesday won't make any difference, because if the month ends on, Sunday or Monday, we're going to have the meeting right away anyway. So I think we need to get a little more clever and say either, the second Monday or the first Monday after the first Tuesday, something like, they used to do for the holidays, so that we have enough space between the end of the month and when the meeting takes place. I also like continuing with the hybrid format. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very difficult to get the packet on Friday afternoon and then be ready for today. I like the idea of the month-end complete reports and either meeting the first Wednesday of the month, for example, or even into the second week. So I'm fine with any of that. I personally hate hybrid meetings, and the reason I hate them, I've been on both sides of them. I've been in the meeting room, the physical meeting room, and everybody else, or many other people are on the Zoom call, and vice versa. I've been on the Zoom call and other people are in the meeting, although that's not as frequently. It just doesn't work. I mean, to me, I can understand especially with this commission being a county-wide commission and people driving from, pretty far away. I think about Cloverdale, Windsor, coming down to Roanoke Park. I mean, it's difficult. And so I see that. So I would say if we're going to have not everybody there in person, I would say that we stick with Zoom, because I don't understand the point of having the option and then having like a few people in the room like we did with our training that day. We expect a lot of people there in person, and I think 2 or 3 of us showed up, and then everybody else was on a computer, and it's just awkward. It doesn't have this kind of sense of equally participating. That's my opinion. So if people want to be able to have the flexibility of electronically coming to meetings, I would say that we all do it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Engbarth.
Yeah, just a few things. One of them, I think if we change the date of the meeting, we have to also make a change in our bylaws, because I think the bylaws state that the meetings are held on the first Monday of the month. So that would be one thing we also would need to be looking at. Another thing is that on the hybrid option, the state legislatures actually has 2 bills before it right now that they're considering to move off of what's Governor Newsom put in and the legislature put in, to allow Zoom meetings, to go ahead and allow that to continue in the future for public agency meetings. And if people are interested, I could provide a copy of a couple of the summaries of those reports to Jen, and they could be distributed to you. But that option is being looked at by the legislature. The other thing is on the paper option. It's not really an option in the Brown Act. If somebody makes a request for a hard copy of the agenda, they're entitled to get a copy of that. They just need to make a request for it. So those are just, and I like the idea, the whole idea. The only other thing on the idea would be the slippage. I think if we set an agenda date for the second Tuesday, I think we still need to set the date to get the agenda out that Friday before, so that the agenda actually goes out on time and well ahead of the meeting date, rather than maybe as things get to be in businesses, sometimes you might want to say, well, we could put it off a day and get this work done Monday or Tuesday rather than Friday, because we don't have the meeting until some later date. I'd like to see us setting a date when the agenda actually has to go out, along with a requirement for, whenever changes we make on the meeting date itself. That's it.
Does anybody, is anybody firmly convinced that it should stay on the first Monday? Those who haven't spoken up. Okay.
I'd say, this is Paul. I'd say it does make sense. I think there was a couple other reasons we talked in past meetings that we talked about this, that the second Monday, in order to get the reports out, I think it was financial, wasn't it? Getting the financial reports out, it was easier instead of right at the end of the month to get them out in time for the agenda to come out and the reports to come out. It was easier if it was pushed back a week. And so it seems to me that the second Monday would make sense. Yeah.
And Director Hammond, is Monday always a fire drill? Would you prefer a Monday or Tuesday? Or does it matter?
Mondays are difficult when there's a holiday. My last library met the second Wednesday of the month, and that way they avoided the Monday holidays and also gave a little more time for the materials to be sent out and absorbed by the commission before the meeting. So I would recommend either a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
And if it's in the second week, then Ms. Lopez, would that have a negative impact on the financial department?
Well, the second week, I don't think so. It'll just be a back-to-back, week-to-week meeting with the finance committee, which is on the third Monday. And but the deadlines are separate. Normally, items that go to the finance committee then go to the commission the following meeting. I don't see a problem.
Okay. Commissioner Elkin.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Paul, with regard to what you were saying, we're actually in the commission meetings, we're not reviewing the financial statements of the previous month. We're reviewing the financial statements of the month before that. So here in our May meeting, we're looking at the March reports, which were reviewed in April by the Finance Committee. I think it still makes sense for the Finance Committee to review the financial reports before they come to the full commission. So I don't see any reason to change that. So it shouldn't be more difficult from that perspective. And just to clarify one other thing, and I apologize, I think I misspoke. I agree with Barbara. I like the Zoom meeting format better than actually having some people in the room and some on Zoom. And I think the Zoom format has worked quite well for us and would like to see that continue. Thank you.
I think as Commissioner Engbarth has said, there may be some movement, however, in the legislature to prevent that from continuing on. So more will be revealed, of course. I'm sort of hearing more, we could do a straw vote, but I'm hearing more for Tuesday than, or Wednesday than just. Would anybody object to the second Wednesday, for example?
That would be great. Make life easy.
I'm not seeing any objections, so perhaps we can do a little bit more research and then we can bring it back to the commission next month we can vote on it, because we can't vote on it today. But if you have second thoughts, if there are some additional, Commissioner Schneider.
Just that Fred's point is well taken. If it's actually in the bylaws, we may need to also bring a proposed motion on the bylaws, I would guess.
That's great. And we're changing the bylaws. We hope to have bylaws revisions here to the commission either next month or the month after that. Isn't that correct, Mr. Hauser?
Yes.
Excellent. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes, we probably have to amend the bylaws. I suggest that the bylaws committee only do a simple strike out Monday and insert Wednesday kind of amendment, rather than the omnibus, who knows what's coming with a total bylaw revision. Please.
Well, we still have to adopt the recommended changes anyway, so we'll just wrap this one into it.
Well, lots of luck. I don't think it's going to go smoothly. Okay, that is my idea.
Pray for us.
So,
anybody else?
I have a question regarding the bylaws and this notion of hybrid or not hybrid. Fred, you seem to be following what's coming out of the legislature. Should we incorporate that modality into our bylaw tweak, revision, whatever we're calling it?
We already say in the bylaws that the commission follows or works with the Brown Act. So I think that's
does that cover us?
That's covered, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Last words?
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell, silly me. I don't know whether that's a demotion
Thank
or
you.
a promotion.
I consider that a promotion, but thank you. Yes, we are tracking the legislation. There are a couple of bills. I would suggest that we not worry too much about them until they make it a little further in the process.
Yeah, I agree.
But we are keeping track of that. I would also say that I don't know that a change in the bylaws is necessary on the teleconferencing side, because as Commissioner Engbart mentioned, your bylaws do require you to comply with the Brown Act. In fact, one of the amendments we're proposing would be a more affirmative statement of that effect. And then my last comment is just sort of for thinking, even under the original Brown Act rules on teleconferencing, you could all participate by teleconference. The rules that we're operating under now allow is that you don't have to post the location on the agenda, and that those locations don't have to be open to the public. That's the big change that occurred. But right now, I mean, even under the traditional rules, you could all participate remotely as long as the majority of you are within the jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Mitchell? Okay. Thanks for the robust discussion. We'll come back to it next month. And let's see. Now we're at, I think I asked for public comment. Hearing none, we're down to 9.2, the responses to open questions from the April 1st budget workshop. Ms. Lopez, are you going to walk us through that, or Andy, are you going to help?
Sure. There were, after review of the minutes and my notes, there were an internal review of these questions. The ones provided in the report were the ones, questions that, there were several questions, but we were going to get back to you on questions where there were, we said we would get back with further research and information. And the first one was the breakdown of the human resources budget. As presented in the workshop, The HR budget is where system-wide benefits are budgeted. So those include retiree health insurance, health reimbursement accounts, the Opeb trust payment, and workers' comp. And so the commission requested a breakdown so that you could better understand the budget for the human resources as it pertains to its staff and its operations, and break out those other benefits that were system-wide. So that is what's presented in the budget. And so if you have any further questions on that, I'm happy to discuss those.
Any questions? Commissioner McKenzie.
Thank you. I was really happy to see that our actual collections expenditures per capita were actually not only higher than the average of all public libraries, but higher than our peer group. So we're spending our Measure Y money wisely. I did want to mention that CFO Lopez and I had a very good conversation this afternoon about my question about the Opeb allocation. I'm certainly happy to accept all this information that she's provided, but I do have, as we discussed this afternoon, some lingering question about the Opeb liability that was on the books before Measure Y. And that was when we were looking at the prior audits, between probably $6 and $7 million that was on the books for Opeb prior to Measure Y passing. So I still have a little bit of a question about the allocation. And she and I agreed that we would take it back to, we didn't have a chance to talk to Commissioner Elkind quite yet, but take it back for a little bit further discussion at the Finance Committee. But otherwise, I'm happy with the responses that she's given, and don't intend to hold anything up tonight about moving forward. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks very much for the comprehensive report. Our next item, 9.3, is the director's search and interim needs. And we, of course, are all saddened that Director Hammond will be leaving the library and retiring. She has done remarkable work in the last 3 years, and it's going to be a challenge to find someone who can step into her shoes. So we're going to, and this is the first that we're talking about it in a meeting. So, but before we get started, I do want to say that I want to appoint a committee to talk about this issue. And so I'd like that committee to be Commissioner Elkind, Commissioner Hauser, Commissioner Schneider, and myself. And of course, we want to make a decision about what we're going to do moving forward as quickly as possible, because Director Hammond is going to be leaving on July 11th. That's tomorrow, practically. So I think that this commission, the committee, knows that it has its work cut out for it to really look into this very quickly. But Commissioner McKenzie, you've got your hand up.
Only if you're finished with your remarks. I just wanted to say, I mean, your concern about how quickly time is passing, and if we appoint a subcommittee, which is fine with me, but to wait for another month until we hear those recommendations, then we're, very close to, July 11th. And I just want to bring up the idea. I have talked to you about this before, Chair Doyle,
and just so that you know, you shouldn't mention any names in a public meeting.
Oh, I'm not going to mention any names.
Okay.
I was just going to mention the concept of possibly having an internal posting, or just a local posting. And I just throw this idea out to the committee or the committee that's going to be working on this, and just in terms of being able to act possibly more quickly than going out to a full-fledged national recruitment process. But I would also like to have some sort of interim meeting between now and the next commission meeting, because again, time is of the essence, and it's already been what, 2 or 3 weeks. So thank you.
That's why I'm appointing a committee. So, you know, I think that they can do what we need done. Commissioner Barth.
Yes, I'd like to back Barbara's request or suggestion of, I think having a special meeting would be in order, would give us the time to talk about this in a setting where that would be the focus of the meeting, as opposed to being part of a longer agenda. And I think we could have a more thorough discussion that might give some guidance and support to the committee members, and would be a good jumping off spot for the committee members. But that at the same time, we can get some of the basics out of the way and have some of the discussions about an internal search versus an external search and all of that, and just get that information out there and talked about it in a setting we have more time to do it. So I think a special session maybe next week would be an opportunity for us to do that, to spend a couple of hours just talking about everybody's ideas about the search process and what our concerns are and what we'd like to see happen with it, and then to get some input from the community. If the community has some ideas too, it'd be a good opportunity to hear from them as well.
Commissioner Cahill.
Yeah, I think the committee is going to move rapidly, considering its membership, and that if a special commission meeting seems to them to be a good idea, that the chair could just call one. I don't want to compel a special meeting. I think the process is, as we now have with the committee, is flexible enough to meet any reasonable contingencies.
Thanks, Commissioner Cahill. I tell you what, why don't we the committee will meet, and then we will let the commission know of our plans. Quickly. Commissioner Hauser.
What timeline do you think we should be meeting? Are we meeting next week?
Yep.
We're meeting this week? We're meeting Sunday morning? I think some people are expressing that we need to get on this pretty quickly, and
is there an indication that we're not going to get on it quickly?
No, Hauser? I'm just okay. Suggesting that you give an idea of when you would want to try to have this meeting, some times and things like that.
We will try to schedule it, and we will try to make sure that we have a scheduled meeting in the next 2 days. Not that we will be meeting in the next 2 days, but that we will have it scheduled, and it will either be for late this week or early next week.
And this will be posted?
That's a question for our attorney. Does this have to be a public meeting?
No, not if this is an ad hoc committee.
That's what I thought.
Required to be a public meeting.
Okay, thank you. So it will not be posted, and it will not be a public meeting. Commissioner Hauser, is your hand still up?
Oh.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Barth, is your hand still up?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay. Then we will move to the consent calendar. Do I have is everyone all right with the items on the consent calendar?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I have a second. Thank you. Any opposed? Any comments?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I hate to be snarky, and I'll try not to be, but the third item on the consent calendar, which was the policy change, we had about 18 or 19 pages of paper here, of which, as far as I could tell, I mean, I had to print out the pages and compare them. As far as I could tell, there was only one bullet point that was removed. It would really be helpful in the future, if we're going to do something like this, to use a strikeout type thing like you see when you're editing text. It would have greatly simplified the process. And as it was, it just seemed like much more complicated than it needed to be for what's really a simple change. But there was no other way to make sure that nothing changed, since nothing was indicated. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Thanks. I think that is a point very well taken. Okay, then we're going to vote on the consent calendar. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. And now we'll move into action items by motion. We've already done 11.1. Let's talk about 11.2, establishing reserves in fiscal year 2022 under the fund balance policy.
Okay. I'd like to share my screen briefly, Jen. Okay, so I wanted to provide background on the establishing the reserves in our current fiscal year. These are based on the fund balance policy. These reserves were also provided at the fiscal year 23 budget workshop on April 1. And at that time, what it showed was the use of the reserves, but they need to be established in the current year to be used in the next fiscal year. This is in a nutshell, these are the reserves that were discussed in the narrative report provided to you. Again, in fiscal year 22, these are the reserves that are established. And these reserves are the non-capital and capital reserves. So there's the major maintenance fund for facilities. And the second one is the IT resource replacement reserve, and the IT capital placement replacement reserve, and the last one that is the vehicle replacement reserve. These last two are capital in nature, meaning that they are to purchase equipment over $5,000. They're capitalized items, and we need to establish this also for audit purposes.
Excuse me, Myrna.
Yes.
I think it would help if you change your slideshow view. We're currently seeing the current slide and the next one, which makes it a little bit harder to read. I think you can set it up so that we're only, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I clicked.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, there you go. I hope you can see more clearly now. The fiscal year 22 is what was established, and what you saw at the budget workshop was the use of these current reserves. We're not purchasing vehicles next year, so we're not using that, and we're not purchasing capital assets for under IT. The capital and also we overhauled the capital improvement fund, where this one is a total of $9.3 million. And it is, that includes capital projects like refresh projects. And the report speaks to attachments that were not, didn't make it to the agenda. So I could share those with you as well. And I could do that now to make sure you have them. Can you see a table of projects? No?
No.
Okay, so I got to
No, we
stop
can't.
share and share again. So for example, under the capital projects and what was presented at the budget workshop is that there is $4.8 million that will be rebudgeted from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. And new projects for a total of $1.8 million and for a total of $6.7 million in our total capital projects for next year. The reserve includes those dollars plus an additional $2.6 million that are set aside for fiscal year 24. And these are projects that represent refresh projects. In the language in the report says that these are projects that we can complete independently from our JPA partners. And these include, furnishings, recarpeting, repainting, mainly things that are indoors. And these are projected into next fiscal year. So the reserves really help in that, for example, under the capital improvement program, is that we can, the facilities team can plan a couple of years in advance, knowing that there are reserves for certain projects that are in the queue and don't have to wait until everything has been fully budgeted, so they could start, because it takes multiple years to plan in some cases. So they can start doing some of the community groundwork, for example, so that they know that these projects are in queue. And that is very helpful in our budgeting process. And so, for example, this is the attachment D that was discussed in the project. So with that, also wanted to, I'm going to go back and share the last couple of slides that I have. And this touches on the impact on the fund balance. Do you see the slides? Yes, okay. I want to show you this. So in summary, the impact on the fund balance is that accounting for all the total revenues and expenditures and the creation of these reserves, including all the reserve that is the stabilization fund, the fund balance that is available for budgeting is as follows. The statements are in your report, and it shows that under property tax, we'll have a $8.1 million in fund balance, in property tax, and under sales tax, $6.1 million. This then affects the following year's fund balance, which is estimated under property tax at $7 million and under sales tax at $6.3 million. And these are estimates that can change with variances in revenues and expenditures, in particular as year end comes and we close our books. These are our best estimates at this time, but this gives you an idea of where fund balance available for budgeting will be at the end of each fiscal year, if everything remains the same. So I wanted to open up for any questions.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Thank you very much, CFO Lopez. Appreciate the detail of this and getting these reserves in place. It's great to see it. As CFO Lopez and I had a conversation about this afternoon also. My specific question was about, in part, the extra $650,000 for the Healdsburg Library. And I thought we were going to see some detail about what that was. And also, in her statement, as she pointed out, she's talking about initiating these projects independently from the JPA partners. And I just wanted to verify that because we do have leases and the leases do specify what the JPA partners are supposed to be responsible for, that none of the projects that we're talking about are projects that have that in the leases say that the JPA partners would be paying. That the implication is that independently from our JPA partners, we're not jumping ahead and paying for something that they should be paying for. And we talked about it a little bit, but I thought we would confirm that this evening.
So I'd like to invite Dave Tachiva, the facilities manager, to provide additional detail if he's available.
Sure. So why is Healdsburg more? Well, the scope of the project increased. It also includes the soft costs in that project for architect. When we looked at how much it cost us to do Roseland and then how much it's costing to do Petaluma, we had to make a budget adjustment in that project. The scope is no different in its infancy than what we've done at Guerneville, just on a larger scale because it's a bigger location. So we're not doing anything in any of the projects that our partners are obligated to do, just like we haven't in the past. What's different about having these funds is now we can approach, in this new facilities master plan, we can approach our city partners and say, look, here we have 1.5 that we're going to do this with, but the building needs another additional, in that case, it's around 6.5 more in improvements over the next 10 years. We can do this all at once and only close the library at once, kind of like what we're doing in Petaluma. So Petaluma is getting a lot of work done, and we're only going to close the library at one time. And as we learn from that project, you really got to start planning those projects years in advance. Getting the money approved in one fiscal year and then saying, okay, go on a big project, just isn't enough time to get all our ducks in a row. So having that capitalization fund is going to greatly improve how fast we can do things. So, Barbara, to answer your question, we're not funding anything that we haven't funded in the past.
So nothing that's in any of the leases that's the jurisdiction's responsibility is being paid for by the library.
Right.
Just
And if permits trigger ADA stuff that's out of our control, then our strategy there is to dial the scope back so we don't need a permit. Like at Guerneville. So Guerneville, we didn't need a permit. It's going to be ready to for anyone to visit on June 1st. Not open to the public that day. The following day it'll open. But we'd love to see all the commissioners come out there and look at it. It's a beautiful library now.
would be great to get an invitation.
That's in the works. I'm way ahead of the game there. So, sorry, Barbara.
That's good.
Barbara on staff.
Yeah,
she's sending that to me.
I just wanted to say a couple more things, David. A couple of years ago, when we worked with the library to get Runner Park painted, there was a cost sharing responsibility that we worked out, which was the library paid for the labor, I think, and the city paid for the paint. It doesn't seem like we're requiring that now of other jurisdictions. And I wondered if you'd address that.
Which ones are those that we're not requiring that?
I don't know. Are they? Are we? We're requiring the same thing?
All our partnerships are different and unique. So for instance, in Windsor, they're changing out some carpet in the forum room and we're painting the exterior. So there's we even have those kind of things going on with the city of Runner Park, as you know, when we met with you and Mr. Schneider and Ann. We're doing a light LED upgrade to that building, which is very time consuming, very long. It's almost completed, but it is clearly above what we said we were obligated to do. Each of the situations are unique. And so we're funding some of this stuff without having a prior commitment by an agency yet. But it's hard to reach a commitment when you don't say you can pay for anything. So just like with the city of Runner Park, we had money to pay for the labor, so we were able to negotiate that.
Anybody else? Thanks very much.
I have just a quick question for Myrna. Really appreciate you putting together the numbers. I was just curious about one thing, the estimates that you have for the fund balance for next year. Are those taking into account the fact that we're from what we can see after 9 months of statements, it looks as though we're actually, our expenses will not be as high as they were budgeted and our revenues might be a little bit higher? Or if in fact that trend continues, could these fund balances be even higher than what you show?
Yes, they could change. We try to, make the estimates as conservatively as we could, seeing that there are going to be some changes, but I do expect that they'll continue to change. It's just a moving target right now.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you putting this together. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, the next report.
I'm sorry, we have Deborah, I think this is a motion, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're so right. You are so right. Would you like to move, Commissioner Elkin?
I would like to move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the newly established reserves under the sales tax fund and newly established reserves and updated capital improvement fund under the property tax fund, as well as the necessary financial adjustments to be recorded in the statement of activity for both funds.
I second it.
Evans, multiple seconds. I think I heard Commissioner Engbars. Were you a second?
Yes, it was.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Cahill?
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin?
Yes.
Commissioner Engbars?
Yes.
Commissioner Havenridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Okay, we're unanimous and my screen just went blank. All right. Next action item. And I believe we're still in finance.
The next item these are, I will take the lead from the Human Resources Director.
Thank you, CFO Muna Lopez. Thank you, commissioners. I'm actually going to bring up Division Manager Sarah Vantries and to head the discussion on this. I would just like to add that the union has requested to hold a meet and confer on this item, which to discuss the impacts of the changes in the operations. So we will just be discussing potentially impacts to the changes, but I do not see a need as to why we cannot move forward to have these conversations unless our council wants to have any weigh in on this. But I believe that the operational decisions can proceed because there are no changes to positions in the bargaining unit. And so with that, I'll go ahead and let Sarah Vantries explain the decisions that are being made to the operation.
Good evening, Chair Doyle, Library Commission members. Sarah Vantries, Public Services Division Manager. So as Suzanne said, we're bringing to you tonight a request to make an adjustment in public services to a couple positions that will help meet our service needs now and in the future. And these are changes to two positions that are currently vacant, one at our History and Genealogy Library and one at the Central Santa Rosa Library. So we've talked about these changes and opportunities with the managers of those libraries. And our goal here is to change a vacant full-time senior library associate at History and Genealogy into a full-time librarian 1/2 position. And the reason for that is related to our reimagining plan goals and our desire to have our staff at that library be able to accomplish a higher level of professional work. I know archives and special collections have been a hot topic for the commission for many years. And the difference between these two positions is small in terms of salary, but there are added elements and a higher professional level of attention that a librarian can provide for not only collection, description, and processing, but also how we help our visitors with their reference and research requests, and also how we can use these materials in engaging the community with their local history content. So you can see some more details about that in the agenda item before you. In order to gain that salary savings, in order to make that transition without adding costs to our ongoing budget, we propose modifying another vacant position across the alley at our Central Santa Rosa Library. This is currently a vacant librarian position that is part-time, and it's been vacant for several years. We propose adjusting that position to a library associate position, also part-time. And again, even though there's not a big salary savings difference, we think that a library associate part-time will be an easier position to recruit. And it's also a position that we're going to need in order to expand our Sunday hours. As you've seen in previous meetings, we are expecting to add several part-time library associate positions to help give us the flexibility to serve our customers well at regional libraries. Thank you, CFO Lopez, for providing the detailed salary information that's in the packet. And thank you, HR Director Silva, for your assistance in preparing this item. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Elkin?
Commissioner Elkin.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks very much. Yeah, I have a question. I think it's about the numbers, but let me clarify something first. we're talking about two vacant positions. One is a vacant full-time position, which we're talking about upgrading to a higher classification. And the other is a vacant part-time position, which we're talking about, I hate to say downgrading, but reducing to a lower classification. Is that right so far?
That's correct. That's a great succinct summary.
Okay, now I'm looking on page 168, and it looks as though in the first case, where we're going from a senior library associate to a librarian, there's very little difference in the salary. It's only about $1,200 a year between these two positions. But in the second instance, where we're going the other way from a librarian, okay, not to a senior library associate, but to a library associate, it looks like there's a significant salary difference. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. A couple of things, just to kind of get in the nitty gritty here. We are showing you the cost for a librarian 1 and the new position, for the full-time position, we're showing you the max salary annually for a librarian 1. And our employees in that classification do promote to librarian 2 after they gain basic experience. And so there is, additional salary difference there when we look at that next step in the salary scale. And then likewise, I believe that the max salary annually that's shown there for the part-time librarian is actually shown at a librarian 2 level.
Okay,
so not, just to get into the numbers, as we say, as the fiscal impact, it's probably about $2,000 a year more savings. Not a big drop in the bucket for public services, but we know it's important to, keep our budget flat in terms of our positions so that we don't incur ongoing costs.
Well, it looks like you'd actually be saving more than that, because while the first change would be an increase of $1,200, the second would be a decrease of $9,000. So am I missing something?
May I speak to that real quick, Sarah? Because I was the one who actually did the costing of that. So the actual budget was that we were going to actually hire at a librarian 1. And so that is the actual max step budget difference for the one that we were actually increasing. But at the librarian 1 too, if we were to fill it at a librarian 2, that's what it was budgeted as a 1-2. So we always budgeted at the max of the top step that it could be budgeted at. So yeah, there's a bigger cost savings to go to the 0.5 library associate than the other way around. So yes, it's a very large savings to downgrade that position than the other way.
Well, this seems like you're just kind of right sizing the positions to best meet the needs, and there's not an increased cost associated with it. I don't see any reason to object. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes, thanks. Organizationally, this makes sense to have a associate to get work direction from a librarian to an associate. I just did have one, and overall, I think the strategy is good. I just did have one question. So the salary says librarian 1 at the top, but it could also be recruited as a librarian 2. Is that right?
It'll be recruited as a librarian 1 or 2, and the successful candidate will be hired at the classification and step that matches their experience. So we may have a brand new librarian that would come in at the bottom, or we may have somebody who's able to come in as a librarian 2 based on their work history.
But so then the salary would be higher if it's a 2.
That's right. So that's why we're giving that estimate that this is really, in the grand scheme of things, it's more or less a flat change. There's going to probably be, at the highest, you kind of take the highest and the highest, then we're still going to have a little bit of salary savings, which will allow us to make this change. And it could be a little less or more based on what the actual numbers are. But because these positions are vacant at this time, it's also hard to compare non-positions with real people. So,
thank you.
Commissioner Engelbart.
Yes, two points or questions. One of them is that if I feel that it's a little bit early to be, I mean, even, I agree with the substance of it and it all makes sense. Everything in here makes sense in terms of what you're proposing to do, Sarah. But with the meet and confer pending, I'm a little concerned about us taking action on it prior to there being the meet and confer. Since the union did make a request for meet and confer, I think it would look a little questionable if they've got a request in like that and that we're not honoring it. The other question I have is, since we're approving the budget at the next meeting, I'm wondering whether not only your item, but some of these other items that are talking about expenditures that are going to happen in the next fiscal year, whether we could just hold on acting on those until we act on the budget when we're approving the budget at the next meeting. I don't know why we're bringing them up this early when we have a meeting next time to approve the budget.
if you don't mind, I'll just speak to the second part of your question regarding the timing for this. So this is, obviously these are not new positions. The senior library associate position at History and Genealogy was very recently vacated. An employee was promoted within that branch. And so we are definitely feeling the need to fill this position. And whenever we have a vacant position per our MOU and best practice, we always review to see whether we want to make any changes to that. So with the staff there of just 4.5 FTE, we didn't want to wait until the next fiscal year to fill this position. And I think Erica is going to speak to the other part of your concern.
Yeah, so just so that you know, the meet and confer is over the impacts of the decision. It is not over the actual outcome of the decision. We have the right as management to determine modify the organization and its divisions and departments. So, this is something that it's a management right. It's in our MOU. We can make this decision. It's just the impact that we have to negotiate with the union over. Okay. And
yeah, that's your call. So if that's the case, that's your view on it, then that's fine. I just think in terms of process, it's a difference in process and what we can or can't do. I feel that having an open process is more favorable. And if the union made a request to spend the time to process that, I think would help with the relations with the union. But I know that we have the right to be able to do it. So whatever your call is on it, that's your call.
I would just like to add that we're going to plan to still meet with them, but I think that if we are able to get the flexibility and the approval to get the commission's approval, then we, once we have the meeting with them, then if we have to do some level of, we're not going to go out and post this position tomorrow. So once we have the ability to meet with them, then we can have that. If we have the flexibility of your approval, then we can go forward with how we will move ahead with them. And we've actually, again, had some other, when you'll see the next item, you will see that we've had another meeting with them and it was pretty successful. So I guess that's all I can speak to that, but I do understand your reservation, Commissioner Engelbart. Thank you.
Thanks. And I have a question also. Since the historic records have moved from an obscure space, are they being used more? And so I assume there's a demand, an even greater demand for library services.
They're definitely being used more than when they were totally inaccessible. I don't have stats at my fingertips, but again, one reason that our history and genealogy manager, Zaida Delgado, recommends this change is because of that extensive backlog of processing of our archival collections, both the items that are held at our offsite archives, as well as smaller collections that we have in our processing room at the history and genealogy library.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Do I have a move to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you.
Chair Doyle. I'm sorry. Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
I do. We have Ian Sangster on, who's my associate who's been working with Suzanne on these particular projects, although he hasn't been actively involved on this first one. But I think it might be a good idea just to ask him to weigh in and see whether he has any concerns with the commission acting this month instead of next month on this particular item.
We'd be delighted to hear him.
Ian?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
You bet.
Yes. Wonderful. I just wanted to jump in and comment that if the union had made a demand to meet and confer, even if it's only over the impacts and effects, it may be prudent to wait. And if there is no urgency, pick this up next month. It is true that typically the public entities have the ability to implement non-negotiable decisions and limit bargaining over impacts and effects, but generally, unless particular circumstances apply, it is best to still negotiate over the impacts and effects of those decisions prior to implementation. And as a result, if it wouldn't unduly prejudice anyone, then I do believe it might be prudent to put this off until next month.
Erica, what do you think?
It's fine with me. I mean, I actually think that we'll have a successful meet and confer. I know what their reservations are, and I think that we can persuade them. So I'm fairly confident that they will, agree with us.
Okay.
I'm perfectly, I believe we can reach agreement based on the issues I'm aware of, so.
All right. Is there anybody that objects to us putting this off until next month? Thank you, Commissioner Engbarth, for raising the issue, and thank you to our legal counsel for stepping in also. Then we're going to table this.
Maybe it can go on consent next month.
Well,
Deborah?
I don't. Yes.
I think somebody made a motion and that needs to be withdrawn, perhaps.
I will withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. Okay. Then we are moving on to 11.4. And that is an authorization to increase the FTE by 1.25 in Budget and Finance and Communications Division. Not in Communication Division, I believe. Does someone want to outline this for us?
Yeah, so we need to amend this item actually to authorize 1.0 FTE in Budget and Finance and nothing in the Communication Division at this time.
Okay.
So they're already, so is there a way to pull up this agenda item so that I can see it? Is that possible, please? And thank you for that. Okay, so, and with the help of CFO Myrna Lopez and our attorney Ian Sangster, we did have a meet and confer with the union last week. And Myrna, CFO Lopez, did a wonderful job explaining that the excuse me, increase in revenues and compliance with the library and the fact that we have not had CFO direction over the past couple of years, and with the addition of the audits and the increased oversight and the immediate vacancy of the accountant and other needs of the library, that we really do need to fill the the authorized but unfunded and unbudgeted accounting manager position at this time. And so and they have agreed that, we've all agreed that we will come back and look at filling the accountant position later on this in the fiscal year of 23. But that it is really in need at this time based on other priorities that the Budget and Finance unit has, that that this department have an accounting manager to assist so that CFO Lopez can meet with Measure Y, the Finance Committee, the Commission, and other things to keep this the library fiscally sound. And so she did an excellent job negotiating that in the meet and confer, discussing that in the meet and confer. And the union, understood the impacts of that and the decision. And so we believe we reached, they were understanding. So I think, Marinette, is there anything else you'd want to add to that?
No, thank you. It's really an important and key position to set up these systems that we need for the, not only just for our finance team, but system-wide for the entire library, policies and procedures that have been discussed at length in the Finance Committee. And I believe that hiring the accounting manager will provide that structure for any new person that's coming in, and providing clarity on roles, and we have systems in place so that there is support there and an environment for success for our existing staff as well as new staff coming in.
Okay. So we would like a motion to adopt the recommendation to authorize the FTE by 1.25 in budget and finance.
No.
1.0. 1.0.
Okay.
Yes.
In budget.
And finance.
So once again, I'll make the motion.
I so move that we authorize the 1.0 full-time equivalent in budget and finance as proposed.
Second.
All right. All right. Any other discussion?
I would just like to add that the other position under communications will be coming forward. I did say in finance that there would be some technical adjustments in the budget for fiscal year 23 that will be presented and delineated at your June regular meeting. And that that position would be included in that.
But that's not what we're voting on right now.
Correct.
Okay. We just, and we want to make sure that the paperwork reflects that. Okay. So Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
And Commissioner Schneider.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're coming down to 11.5, and that's the recommendation to waive loss damage item fees incurred due to COVID-19 pandemic. So talk to us about this.
Good evening again, Sarah Vantries, Public Services Division Manager. So we're bringing a recommendation to you to apply a portion of our library cards and borrower policy in a way that we haven't done before. We have the express permission through the policy to waive lost or damaged item fees for our library users in situations that are related to a natural disaster. And so the library has determined that the COVID-19 pandemic is a natural disaster, and we have been waiving lost and damaged item fees from a particular time frame from the start of the pandemic, when it was declared to be a pandemic by the World Health Organization, through the date that the library was able to begin taking returns 24/7 through our book drops. So we've already been waiving lost or damaged item fees that patrons identify were lost or damaged as a result of this natural disaster per our policy. At this point, we have, let's see, I'm looking at my notes here on this item. We have just over 6,000 items that are still in lost status from this time period. That represents about 1% of all items that were used by library patrons during that time period. So a very, very small number that were not able to be returned. And so we're asking the commission to approve the waiver of these fines in accordance with our policy as a categorical waiver versus requiring these users to request that waiver one by one. We believe that this action would represent our reimagining plan goal to help support community resiliency, recognizing that for many community members, the pandemic has had very significant effects on their lives, and waiving these replacement fees for these 6,000 items would reduce future barriers to library access for these users. I'm happy to answer any questions about this. There's more detail in the agenda report.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Just a quick question. Just for the record, we don't have any insurance to cover this, even though it's a natural disaster and loss of our inventory, I'm assuming.
You know, we have not asked that question, but I do not believe that it would be covered.
Yeah, just for the record, I thought I ought to throw that into the mix. And then secondly, can you tell us, or do we lose a lot of the Wi-Fi hotspot Chromebooks, that kind of hardware besides, books and CDs?
Yeah, the
DVDs.
the 6,000 items includes books, DVDs, CDs, and other tangible materials like Chrome kits and hotspots.
Yeah. Do you have an idea though how many? I've heard that we've lost a lot and they're hard to get. Just kind of, I keep bringing up the requests that I keep hearing from our lab members about needing more of especially the Wi-Fi hotspots and the Chrome kits.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike probably has the exact number, but I would also add that at this point, we've been replacing these items. So it's, we're looking at things from about a year or more ago.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Ingvar.
Yes, just to follow up on what Barbara's raising, and it's a technical question that we might want to have counsel look at as well. But on these items, how do you know that they're lost? I mean, people just aren't responding. You're not, they're not bringing them back, or what's happening? So they don't.
Not bringing them back is the informal definition, and then the technical definition of lost has to do with how long an item has been overdue and when it is charged to the borrower. So
so people aren't filling out a form saying, I lost this item, or I don't have this item because it's been misplaced or damaged or anything else. I'm wondering about, just for insurance purposes, but also for other purposes, if there's not any indication from the user about what happened to the item, that we might be in a situation where, if I wanted a Wi-Fi hotspot, that I would just take it and just not return it, which isn't much different from, somebody who comes into a candy shop and sees some candy that they want and takes the candy without paying for it. And I think having something that puts the customer on the spot where they need to at least fill something out that says that it's lost, that it's been destroyed or it's been lost, sort of leaves us open for people to just take merchandise, to take our inventory, and feel that they're able to get away with it because there's not any, anything they need to do other than just not respond. Are you understanding what I'm bringing up?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying and the concern there. And again, this is a very, very small number of items that were borrowed during this time period, about, like I said, about 1%. And we have a very specific criteria. So again, the definition of lost is a technical definition within integrated library system, when an item is a certain number of days overdue, it moves to a lost status and is charged to the patron. So these 2,232 patrons who have lost items have a balance on their account, and that's what we're asking you to waive. And the time frame for this is only for items that triggered that lost status, technically speaking, in our systems between March 10th, 2020 and May 29th, 2021. So normally we're only going to waive accrued fees per our policy on a case-by-case, one-at-a-time basis, in which the patron would identify that the item is lost or damaged as the result of a natural disaster or another category that's represented by the policy that you have approved.
Erica, you have something to add? Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to impress upon you that these patrons were unable to return their items because our book drops were closed. So even if they wanted to return them, they were not able to. And that is part of the reason why we are taking this approach. And we have to assume that, there is a portion of patrons who moved during this period of time who are really unable to return the items. And with the hotspots and what happens is that after they are gone for a certain amount of time, the data is no longer available. We turn off the data. So those devices are no longer able to be used after a certain amount of time. So we're not continuing to pay for that, for those data charges. And we can get, we are replacing those. So, the reason why we're taking this step is because, we want to, we prefer to give our patrons the benefit of the doubt and to encourage them to return to the library, to continue using the library. At this point, they are not, and they will not be able to. So, we really just want to clear the books and get this off of our, these items out of our library catalog so that we can replace them and move forward.
Well, I think any way that could be made to make it easier would be good, but I also think that there should be some process and connected with this where the patron, and we can give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that they need to, kind of prove to us that it was lost. But I think that if they can sign something that says, I wish to have a waiver of this because this item, I don't have it, or I couldn't return it, or something, so that we have some contact with the patron where they're making an effort to at least to acknowledge the fact that, that there's an item that was missing that is on their watch, so to speak. And I think just to make an assumption that the items are lost without any indication from the patron, it leaves us open to people who might not have the kind of ideal standards and morals compass that all of us have, that might just feel that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to take something the next time there's a natural disaster, much like when there's a riot in Watts or a riot in some city and people go into the stores and take TV sets out with them. I mean, there are people that's something that they look forward to the opportunity to do. And
Commissioner Elkin.
Thanks. First of all, I wanted to thank Erica for clarifying that issue about the hotspots. I had a feeling that was the case, and I'm glad to hear that. I did want to follow up on something that Commissioner Engbarth is suggesting, and I'm just curious. I realize that from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to spend more money to recover something than it would to write it off. But I'm curious, have we attempted to contact these patrons either by text, email, or snail mail to say, in effect, hey, you have these materials that you borrowed. You weren't able to return them during the pandemic. If you can return them now, that would be great. There's no fines. If you can't return them for some reason, we understand that. Just let us know. And then we could go to this step and write everything off. I'm just wondering if we let people know that they could do this without any penalty, if we might actually get some things back, unless that effort is more costly than the value of what we would get.
I agree.
Anne and Mike, you're next. So which would you, who wants to go first?
Thank you so much for these comments. And Commissioner Elkind, yes, we have been contacting these patrons for more than 6 months at this point. So they've received multiple notifications. And with regards to Commissioner Ingbarth's comment about requiring the patrons to identify that these items have been lost, we have done that for hundreds of patrons at this point. And our concern is with the equity of how this policy is being applied, that if we are requiring individuals to tell us that the pandemic had a major effect on their lives, and so they weren't able to bring back library materials, we are putting people in a position to share more about their lives than it's really appropriate for staff to know. And it's a burden to staff to hear these difficult stories. So as a result of sending notifications, again, we're talking about a tiny number of materials that are still out from this time period. We've been forgiving these fines for those who ask us to for almost a year now, and we'd like to move forward with clearing the remaining accounts. At this point, as Deputy Director Thibault mentioned, we also recognize that probably the disruption of the pandemic means that we will, no matter what we do, we will not see these items nor the fees associated with them. And so for the sake of some practical considerations, for example, being able to purchase replacements, clear holds lists, and other kind of cataloging concerns, it also helps us to remove these items and move forward with customer service.
Director Hammond? Director Hammond, you want to weigh in?
Mike, do you still have your?
Yes, I put
you
it
go
down.
first?
Okay. Sarah answered it very well as far as notification. The way that the system works is when something is due, it's sent a first notice for overdue notice after 7 days, another one after another 14 days, and then a final billing / loss notice is sent out after 42 days. After that fact, during the course of the pandemic, we actually repeatedly reached out and did batch emailers trying to last best effort to get those back. So in that regard, numerous notices were sent out. And Sarah's point about equity of service is a good one. Some people, having lost these things over the course of the pandemic, may not even be using the library for fear of ostracization or otherwise, whereas I agree we're not going to get these things back. And by clearing them out of our inventory, it will indeed, not only the books, but the technology, purchase the replacement parts so we can move on and replenish all of our services.
Thanks, Mike. That's a good point. I wish, it would have been good for me, at least, if I'd have seen that there was that process in place, that efforts were, that in the policy change, that here's what we do before you declare something that's lost, so that, reading this, I would know then that that's really what's in place, that it's not just
That's a good point. Rest assured, we go to lengths for all notifications for all circulating items on the library system.
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes, thanks. Oops, there we go. Thanks. So actually, I think it's great that we're looking to sort of moving post-COVID and getting past, all the things that people experienced when the libraries were closed and what a sad time that was. I do want to say that I like Andy's idea a bit of at least notifying users, hey, we miss you, we love you. If you can return the items, that's great. This library has done amnesty programs as recently as 2019 when we went fine free. So just a thought, might be worth the little extra. You might you know, you might get some stuff back, and you might also build more goodwill than if you just wipe out the fees. Just a thought. Some people will probably bring stuff back. I have found that in amnesty programs.
Commissioner Cahill.
Yeah, I don't want to presume bad faith on the part of our patrons. I think we're talking about people, many of whom would now are not coming back to the library because of what Mike said. They feel they're going to be ostracized or turned away. I remember former Commissioner Foxen told us not so long ago that as a child, she didn't feel right in coming back to the library because she had lost an item or two. This is a bad result. So I think the staff proposal is an excellent one, and I hope we approve it.
Deputy Director.
To speak to Commissioner Schneider's point, we actually did discuss sending out some specific targeted email to those patrons, but we hadn't fully, thought this process through.
Is that a possibility?
Well, I was going to see if Ray was available to speak to this, because I think he was part of that discussion, but I don't see him. So
I'm here.
Yeah.
Chair Doyle, commissioners, staff, thank you. Ray Hawley, communications manager. I always believe that if you do something good, you're in the public realm, you should take credit for it. And I do think we should reach out to these folks with a message similar to this. We did this, we did quite a publicity splash when we went fine-free. And we had some detractors. We had people who feel like we're encouraging bad behavior, but really most of these folks are struggling. And really it's hard. I think it's more important that we take care of people that are struggling than we punish the very few tiny fraction of people who misuse the system. They're going to steal it anyway. And I'd love to do a little PR blitz about this.
Great. Director Hammond, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank our staff. They've done a fabulous job of explaining this whole very complicated issue. I would just like to underscore two things. One, I do like the idea of the amnesty communications. I think we can do something great with that. But what we're talking about here is a very discrete period of time. It was during the pandemic and during the time that we were closed. We were not accepting returns, as Deputy Director Thibault mentioned. So that's what we were looking to clear in this process. And to Commissioner Ingbarth's point about if somebody wants it, they'll just take it. If you walk away with a Chromebook now, you better believe we are going to put it on your record and you will have to pay for it. That's not what we're talking about with this question that's before us right now.
Okay, Commissioner Ingbarth, your hand is still up. I'm assuming that your questions have been answered. Maybe.
I'll turn it off. I just forgot.
Okay, I just
too many
wanted
times
to make sure
today.
that
I'm sorry.
Just wanted to make sure that you're.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay, so can I have a recommendation to waive?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Go
for it.
Let me read the motion first.
Okay.
I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve a recommendation granting a waiver of lost/damaged item fees incurred during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay.
I think that was Commissioner Parker.
Deborah,
All right.
I'm sorry, can I just jump in for a second? I
Sure.
thought I heard from communications manager Ray Hawley that he liked the idea of doing this not as an either or, but in conjunction with an amnesty outreach effort to patrons. I'd like to support that along with this measure. I think if we do both, we're casting the widest possible net to reach out to people and get them to come back to the library.
I think everybody agrees. I'm not sure that.
Do we need to amend the motion or no?
Yeah, I don't think we need an.
Okay, I'll defer.
Motion. Mr. Holly, do you think that you'll remember that you're going to be doing an amazing outreach?
We'll talk about the benefits of outreaching specifically to this group versus a larger group. I want to think that through a little bit. Okay. And I do agree that it's an operational decision.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Cahill.
Yes.
Commissioner Elkin.
Yes.
Commissioner Engbarth.
Yes.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes.
There we go. I think this is a great discussion. Thanks everybody for being very thoughtful, and I think this will clear the books, but it will also, I think, give us yet another way to reach out into the community. We are supposed to be having a closed session. I must fall on my sword. Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Schneider did an excellent job at pulling together, and also Suzanne did an excellent job at pulling together the information that we wanted to present to you about Director Hammond's suggested salary increase. And I came home from a trip and have COVID and just was too sick to do my part. And so I'm afraid we're going to have to cancel the closed session, and we'll take it up. We'll take it up next month. I'm very apologetic to Director Hammond, to my committee, and also to the rest of the commission. So we don't have to reconvene the open session. Do we have any agenda items for future commission meetings? Did I hear you giggle, Commissioner Hauser?
We had so many things that we continued that I'm sorry. I have to laugh sometime about something.
Well, I don't think we're going to have major discussions about these things. They are just details that we have to tidy up. Yes, Commissioner Engbarth?
Yes, I have a question. It's related to the closed session, the potential of the new one, but I'm wondering, given the timing on the resignation, whether maybe along with us meeting to review the efforts of the committee to maybe have council be able to review with us also the issue of concern, or that's come up in other settings, of spiking, because with Ann not being an employee, us giving her a raise might be construed as that, especially if we already have notice of her resignation. And I just think to maybe give council a heads up, to give them the time to maybe put something together to present to us before the meeting starts next month.
Well, she'll still be an employee, but I hear your point. Okay, I will discuss that. Thank you. And Commissioner Parker, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just had made notes about next meeting that we've got to discuss the schedule of meetings and that adjustment of the salary, the search committee, and now Director Hammond's salary adjustment. So that's what I kept track of.
Thank you. Anybody else? I think that'll give us something to start with. All right, then the date and time of the next meeting is Monday, June 6th, 6 o'clock. We assume we are going to be on a Zoom call, but that could change. One never knows. Yeah. And we would like to adjourn tonight in honor of Marie Hinton, and I want to hand it over to Paul Heavenridge to let him talk about Maria's life.
Thank you. I've talked to a lot of people about Marie, and I've had the experience of working with her on the Petaluma lab. So this is what I'll say. Mrs. Book, that's what generations of students at the old Adobe School in East Petaluma called Marie Hinton. She started the school library 50 years ago with a book cart. And when the school finally built a library, they named it the Marie Hilton Library. Marie loved Hinton reading and books. I knew because of her volunteer work at the Petaluma Library as the chair of the Library Advisory Board. She was on the lab since the 80s and often was the president of the lab. She was also an advocate for libraries in general and the Petaluma Library in specific. Marie was one of the longest serving members of the Petaluma Library Advisory Board, an advocate for libraries in general. Oh, I read that already, sorry. Aside from her always pleasant attitude, the one thing that I most remember about Marie in both her role as a member of the lab and as its chair was her complete and utter gratitude for the staff of the Petaluma Library. In fact, Tim May, who was a longtime member of the Petaluma Lab, said Marie would never end a lab meeting without expressing her gratitude for the staff of the Petaluma Library, thanking them for all that they do. She will be missed and remembered as a loving reading advocate and a library champion. Thank you.
Deborah, you're muted.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Paul. Then why don't we adjourn this meeting with thanks to Marie and to all of the volunteers like her who have really contributed to the Sonoma County Library. Do I have a move? No motion?
Move.
Okay. And with that, we're adjourned.
Hope you're
Thank
feeling
you.
better.
Hope you feel better.
I'm sorry to be
Better.
coughing theatrically.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Take care.